Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 2 live stream for with the Genesis. It was a pretty decent start both for our outrights and for our DFS lineups. Guys like Cantlay up there in first place, contention with the speed, a few other guys up there towards the middle of the pack, and overall a few duds as we always have after round 1. But looking forward to the weekend, and especially here for a round 2 showdown slate where I think we can try and go out there and extract some value. So we'll go through what to expect from the course, of course, the showdown and prop side of things as well. And towards the end, want to make sure we take some time to take a look at the matchup board. So hopefully we get that posted on Hard Rock Bet by the time we get towards the end of the live stream, because if so, we'll look at some head-to-head, some 3 balls out there for Friday, and really take our time with this. So just giving you guys an idea of what to expect here. We got AC Barker down there, first down there in the chats. First off, welcome. We have David down there, Carl down there in chat. There you go. You only had one lineup this week. You got to get more in there, David. But yeah, Rory, right? Not the best second 9. He's got an L in his name for a reason. Rory McIlroy with the capital L out there. With Rory. Not surprising, something he does all the time. But what's going on, Carl, AC? And yeah, the Rory blow-up is starting to become a theme. It's not starting to. It has his whole career, guys. If you're new to PGA DFS, maybe I get it, right? Not knowing about Rory being a little bit of a loser, but he's well known for that. He does it quite often. It's why he doesn't have a major since his third, fourth year on tour, right? It's been a long time for a reason. But enough complaining about him. Let's take a look at the golf course, which is a reason why we had such a good start, right? A lot of our outrights, a lot of our DFS exposure was favored towards the AM wave. And the reason for that was the weather forecast, right? Now, we can't go back here on windy, but of course, the PM wave looked a little bit windier than the AM wave. And while there wasn't a clear delineation between the two tee times, especially this morning when I woke up and saw that it was going to be maybe 10, 15 mile an hour winds, I had to jump on a weather advantage. This golf course is extremely susceptible to any kind of wind change. It'll dry out the golf course, right, with all that moving air. But more importantly, it exacerbates all of your misses, right? It balloons balls when you're hitting into the wind, makes greens a little bit harder to hold when you're hitting downwind. And that resulted in over a 0.9 shot difference. In fact, by the time they counted that last group on 18, ended up being a 0.92 shot difference there. And based on the weather forecast for Friday, that's not only going to be useful for the showdown lineups that I went out there and entered out here this morning, but also for our full round stuff, right? I mentioned potentially trying to stack the PM AM wave, the AM PM wave, should say, the other way around, right? Taking the guys that went off early today because the conditions for Friday looked pretty flat. And if we head over here and look at the forecast, that is pretty much holding up, right? So in the PM, it maybe gets slightly more windy with the sustained winds going from 3-4 miles an hour upward closer to 6 to 7 miles an hour there towards 2-3 p.m. local time. The wind gusts don't get significant, right? They're 3-4 miles an hour out there in the morning wave. In the afternoon, they get there towards 8-9 miles an hour. So I do think you might see a slight difference between the two waves, partially because of how pristine the greens are, right? Obviously in the morning, they don't have imperfections on them. They've been cut overnight. They've been pressed. They're going to be pretty much perfect out there for those players. That diminishes as the day goes on. But on top of that, you have more receptive greens out there in the AM hours. And you had today, right? What really exacerbated that difference was the difference in wind conditions. So you're going to get a few of those factors right out there for Friday, or maybe the earlier tee times get a slight advantage. But the wind difference, right, that you had out there on Thursday isn't going to be nearly as significant as what we had for round 1. So that advantage looks like it's going to hold up, which I'm hoping can help us out for some of our full round stuff. I'm already a pretty decent start, I should say, out there for some of my GPP lineups. But if we end up getting that weather edge to come through, that would really hammer that home for me. So looking forward to that. Hopefully can lean into that for Showdown. In terms of strategy, we'll hop over to the Showdown side now. I don't think it has a massive impact, right? I think we want to take guys from both waves. I don't think you're going to see that 0.9 shot difference. Probably closer to something to a 0.3, a 0.4 shot difference. So if it's only going to be a third of a shot, right, between the two waves, you're likely to see probably a 60-40 split between the ceiling performances between the two distributions. I think if anything, right, if you're split between a guy going off early and then somebody going off a little bit later tomorrow, and if you need to, break that tie, right, you're having a really hard time just, deciding between those two, go with the guy teeing off earlier, right? It's a clear way to break those ties. But outside of that, maybe giving like a 1 point boost, right, towards the guys going in the first 5-6 groups tomorrow. It's nothing more than that, right? It's just a slight little tweak, probably a tiebreaker at best. But day one, definitely something I wanted to tweet about, right? So that's why I put that out there on my Twitter. Ended up being a pretty big advantage. And a lot of that was because of the forecast that we saw this morning. I'm glad we're pointing this out, Nick, because you're not the only one. And we're going to talk about this when we get to props. Prize Picks is still holding your 688 hostage. Hopefully that's keeping their site running. We'll talk about it more extensively, but yeah, they're having some financial issues, it looks like. $15 million fine. They're no longer going to be able to operate down in Florida, so that's a whole other talking point. On top of that, huge losses on multiple influencers, winning over $1 million on the Super Bowl. In general, a ton of losses on the Super Bowl because of the overtime and how much extra yardage, all of that for overs existed. It was not a good month for them, and you're not getting your withdrawal. There's other people in my Discord that have had their withdrawals denied. It's unfortunate and something we got to look into. How's it going? Thanks for the Can't Lay top 5. You trying to mush it or something like that out there with the top 5 cash? It's only one round in, buddy. We think that the studs bounce back tomorrow. I do think so, right? It's a cut that a lot of them are going to make. I think that you're going to see a lot of them bounce back, right? I mean, Can't Lay, was the only one that really went out there and nuked. You had guys over here like Victor Hovland shoot -1, Rory +3, -1 for Victor, +2 for Max Homa, +1 for Justin Thomas. You're going to see a lot of these guys under par, right? You scroll down here a little bit, this top end of the 7K range, the 8K range went out there and absolutely nuked. I mean, that might happen again, right? These guys are class players. Could totally go out there and repeat that. But yeah, these top end players are definitely going to rebound a little bit. So hopefully they make the cut, right? Especially a Rory. I think he's got to worry about that a little bit. Hell, even a Max Homa at +2 probably has to worry about that too. But in general, yeah, I do expect a little bit of a bounce back there. And not sure what you're referring to, Carl, but feel free to let us know down there in chat. But let's talk through our strategy. So like I mentioned, I don't think we're going to see a massive difference there. So it's mostly about game theory to me. And kind of going off of what Nick just said, I'm expecting to see some bounce backs, right? So you've got Xander there at -1. We've got JT there at a +1 score, $9,900, $9,200 respectively. Both played below their expectations for Thursday, but are players that I could see bouncing back. So you've got JT, he's going to be going off a little bit later tomorrow. You have Xander, who's going off a little bit earlier in terms of a tee time. Neither is on the extreme of the spectrum, so it's not like they're going to be affected massively, right, by any sort of weather difference. And both are players that were expected to play well this week, right? Coming in, we're number 1 and 2 in terms of recent form. Xander Schauffele, it's not like he had a horrible round at -1, but I've only got him at about 15, maybe 16% ownership. Right around Patrick Cantley and Aberg in terms of their ownership number. And then the same thing with JT, right? JT was 30% owned for some of your main slate stuff. And it's, interesting how quick people jump off a player, after I'm going out there and just having a so-so round. So obviously +1's not what you want from JT. Started off horribly, but did go out there and rebound quite nicely towards his last 8-9 holes out there. So at +1, only 15% ownership now, right? Half the ownership of what he was for some of the main slate stuff. I think is the type of player you should look at out there for a round 2 showdown. So the weather edge isn't really there, but what is there is that game theory edge, which is always present out there from a showdown format. We talked about it with main slate. I would say for main slate, it's actually a little bit less of a factor, just because you have a 4-round sample, more golf holes to actually work with, less variance, right, in a larger sample size, to let some of that cream rise to the top. Whereas in an 18-hole sample size, just a day of golf, or you can wake up with a sore back, you could wake up just not really feel right? Wake up on the wrong side of the bed, as the saying goes out there, and not play that well, right? It's an 18-hole sample size. Craziness happens in this sport. Me and you know it, right? I've actually shot under par for 9 holes before, which is crazy considering I'm like a 5 or 6 handicap. But any given day, right, I can get pretty close to that 72 number, right? And I'm not a great golfer. Also, on the other end of that spectrum, you can hit 80s, 90s real easily as well. So it's a crazy sport, maybe a little bit less so for these tour pros, but you want to embrace that variance, right? You want to know that that's possible out there with your scoring. And a lot of these guys like Xander, JT, you can say the same thing about Sahith, right? He shot +1, who's now only going to be 13% in for round 2 showdown, that you could look to for a little bit of a bounce back. So great question, Nick. Just kind of gave us a little bit of a segue into our strategy for round 2. But that's normally the case right out there for our strategy. And I think at this kind of golf course, you should lean into that even more, right? It's tough. It's not an easy track, right? If you're not really on your stuff, you're going to get exposed out there. And it's not like guys like JT and Xander can't turn it around in a hurry, right? They'll have bad rounds. You've seen it from them of late. They've been the top performers out there in their price ranges. And those are the kind of plays that I'm getting to. So going a little bit further down, top end of the 7s, like myself, a little bit of Keegan Bradley, kind of spun his wheels at even par, but not the worst round, all things considered. And all of that was because of the flat stick. In fact, he lost over 2.5 strokes with the putter, was pretty solid with the off the tee play and the approach play. So overall, I think that he was hitting the ball pretty well, just wasn't getting anything to drop. So as a little bit of a liability with the putter at times, not the most consistent player out there with the flat stick, but with that inconsistency comes pop performances, right? And comes bounce back performances after a down day like he had for Thursday. So like I'm there at $7,800. Corey Connors at 74, another striper of the golf ball that hit the ball pretty well today. A player that can go out there, spike with the flat stick, and kind of like a Keegan Bradley. Actually, you think both of these players profile rather similarly. I'm out there for round 2. Are just really good ball strikers that have figured it out with the putter over the last year or so. It's why you've seen them become so consistent, especially with Corey Connors. It's why he's become a top 25 machine, is rather than having a huge negative with the flat stick every single week, kind of like you see with a Luke List. Now Corey Connors can go out there and at least keep it afloat for most golf tournaments. So I like the fact that he's getting better there. Same thing with Keegan Bradley. And we already know what kind of ball strikers they are and have been for their entire career. In the last highlighted play, afterwards, I want to go through some of the chalk that you might want to keep an eye on and maybe avoid for some of your lineups. But the last play I'm getting to at some lower ownership would be a Gary Woodland at $6,100. Of course, he's far from the only play I'm getting to, but it should give you a good idea of the types of guys I'm taking a shot on in the 6K range. He's got course history. The ball striking was on point today. Had a few ugly holes in the back 9, which took him from a much better score out there to just -1, which is very average for the field. So he's a much better ball striker than a lot of the other guys in this range. He's relatively low owned. And in general, I think he looks back, right? You know, a lot of times you have these guys that take some time off, and it's going to take them a little bit of time to get acclimated. Will Zalatoris kind of surprising me with how quickly he's coming back. And I'd say the same thing with Gary, right? The stats over the last few weeks haven't been pretty. Same thing with Zalatoris, right? His first few weeks weren't the prettiest right out there from the shots gained perspective. But as the rounds have come in, as they've gone more experience, more practice, right, more familiar, right, with being back in the PGA Tour, you see them get more acclimated. So $6,100 showdown format is where I would like to take a Gary Woodland. Over a 4-round sample, I'm not sure he has the mental strength. I don't know if he has the focus yet to go out there and play a full 72 holes. But for an 18-hole sample, I could see him spiking for something like 3-4 shots gained. And at $6,100, we don't need him to have the nuts performance, right, to be what you have to have in Showdown, right? Because it's not always about what you're getting, right? With a $6,100 golfer, a lot of times it's what you're getting towards the top of the board in terms of your flexibility. So $6,100 Gary Woodland is the type of player I'm getting to, right? And there's actually quite a few players I'm taking towards the bottom end of the board, all relatively low owned, and more importantly, players that could just spike some upside, right? They don't have to be safe. They don't have to be players with a floor. That's not necessarily what I'm looking for with a player down here. It's more so the ability to go out there and have that 3-4 shots gained performance. In terms of chalk to keep an eye on, well, you've got Svensson here at 9.3%. I don't love that ownership number. I guess you got to point out Ricky at 7.1%, but I kind of get it given that he's a $6,600 Ricky. That just feels like a little bit of a criminal misprice. You've got Luke List at 8.7, Tom Hoagie at 12%. That's definitely a pretty high ownership number and a tough one to swallow out there for your lineups. 14.3% out there with the Cameron Davis, also relatively high. 12.9 on a Bo Hostler. You could even say Hideki at 9.8, 10.8 on a Benny Ann. Are all numbers that you get a little uncomfortable with, right? Now, just because those guys are getting some attention doesn't mean that you have to fade them for your lineups. But what it does mean is that you shouldn't be playing all of them, right? And making that exclusively your player pool out there in the 6, 7, and 8K range up here, where you've got super chalky guys like Zalatoris, where I've got him at 23%. Jason Day, JT Poston, right? All getting some pretty good attention there. As long as you're taking like 3, maybe 4 of those 10 players or so and taking them out of your player pool, you're probably going to be okay, right? Preferably more, right? If you make it like a 50-50 split, right, playing like at most half of those kind of players, I think you're on track for making your player pool. Now, personally, I'm fading almost every single one of them, right? So I'm extremely contrarian. I play a lot of lineups. I play balls to the wall. I try and take a huge stance against the field. And honestly, the 6, 7K range, especially a lot of that chalk down there, I think there's only like 1 or 2 of those players we just mentioned that I'm even taking in my player pool. So the 8, 9K range, 10K range, I'm a little bit more willing to take some higher ownership. But down low, especially for the single round sample, I'm all about playing that game theory edge. Let's check up on chat, see if there's any specific players that people want to ask about. If not, we're going to hop over to the DFS lineup construction side and then go through some of the prop stuff. No, not first round. It's for the full round stuff. So you're not trying to mush me. I gotcha. I was like, are you trying to pull some funny business? No, it's for the full tournament. So not first round. Running the same lineup back. I could see it. That would definitely work. Any hope for Fitzpatrick? Yeah, I didn't play Fitz this week. +3. You can play him in Showdown, right? I don't think it's a horrible format. If he's going to make the cut, he probably has to shoot like -3, -4, which is going to be pretty close to a ceiling round, I'd imagine, right? Like -5 is probably safe to be close to the optimal lineup. But yeah, I think he's far from a bad play. I didn't take the plunge with you, but I think for Showdown, he's a pretty good bounce back candidate. If Rory misses the cut, you'd laugh your ass off, even though he's your highest exposed. Yeah, same thing, man. I don't take it too personally, right? I even told you guys, I don't like the guy that much, and I played him this week. Like, if he misses the cut, I'll second guess myself. I'll go, should have avoided him, right? Like, obviously, he misses the cut. I don't like him to begin with, but at the same time, you can't do that, right? I catch myself. I stop myself from thinking that way. And I'll laugh about it, like you said. Just laugh it off. It's funny, right? I don't like them, so you can kind of revel in that a little bit. Just on the prize pick stuff, yeah, it's hard to tell with when that's going on. I got you. Yeah, they are a joke. Do we like the later morning guys that chill out, get the air, and might be playing the round between like 10 and 3? I could be about that. Let's go back to the forecast, right? So and show people what they're talking about. So you're saying avoiding the guys going off like super early, right? So the guys teeing off like I think the earliest tee time, let's not even think, right? Let's just check, right? It's 7:20 local time out there. So avoiding the guys in that first like 40 minutes to maybe 70 minutes of tee times, right? Like nearly first hour and a half of tee times out there. Maybe avoid those. You take the guys playing in the warmer air. You've got next to no winds for pretty much the entire day. I could see it, right? Like, I'm not targeting a specific subset of tee times. Like, I think it's going to be pretty wide open. But if you wanted like a honeypot, right? Like the perfect players to target, you would probably want to wait like 30, 40 minutes, right? You'd want to wait a little bit to where it warms up. You get to those like 56 degree temperatures. So yeah, I like the way you're thinking there, right? Waiting a little bit on the tee times and still avoiding the later conditions where it might bake out a little bit. I like that a lot, Nick. Let's see. Anyone in California stuck to betting on this shit through prize picks? Yeah, I'm not even going to be able to do that at the end of this month. So we'll talk about it later, but Florida's banning prize picks. So It's like you have to have one or the other at this point. It's like kind of disappointing. Can you go ahead and chase that list putting round? Yeah. Anyone out there that's not in my community or not watching this live stream, please play Luke List after he goes out there and gain strokes putting to the field. It's very likely to happen again. Wink, wink. Yeah, let them all play Luke List right after that round. That's for sure. I'm glad I played him in my lineups for like my 4-round stuff, but yeah, that's not happening for round 2 Showdown, right? Would I also play my pulls for Underdog Showdown? I would, yes. Now, the projections are a little bit different, right? Obviously, it would favor certain players over another, but in general, it gives you a good idea. I think that the ownership would be slightly different as well, just because of how the drafts work. But yeah, I mean, a lot of what I do is game theory based, but also a lot of it is based on just what I saw, right? Eye test based, trying to take guys that I think will bounce back. I don't think it's a horrible idea, but it's not perfect. It's definitely not apples to apples. Scotty or Rory in Showdown? For me, it's Rory. How would I play the better guys that just didn't perform at all well, like a Thomas, Homa, or Fitz? I would play them. And honestly, I would mix them into lineups, right? Like I wouldn't make all your lineups just guys that like shot shitty, right? You probably want to mix in a few guys that at least had average rounds, but they're a good way to get different. They're all going to be slightly lower owned than some of their counterparts, and they work for a little bit of leverage. You've got props. How much is it for DFS also? If you're going to do both, it's 25 as opposed to 15, so it's $10 more. A little bit of a discount there, AC. Gotcha. Either way, you bet top 5 first-round leader, which cashed. There you go. Hey, congrats to you. That's pretty sick. Cheers to you. I've got water here, but cheers. What do I think about Rory and Colin? I think Rory's a decent Showdown play. I think that Colin Morikawa, I would say he's an average Showdown play. Right. So Morikawa, I've got at 16.5%, which is pretty typical ownership right down here towards the bottom end of the 9K. Whereas Rory McIlroy, I've got us a little bit of a leverage play. And, you know, we know that he has to go low to make the cut, right? So he's going to have that motivation going for him. I think he's going to have to shoot at least -3, maybe even -4 to make the cut tomorrow. So we know the motivation's there. The ownership's relatively low. That's why I would say that Rory is a pretty decent Showdown play. Morikawa, I totally get it. Good course history, right? I think he models particularly well for this golf course, but the ownership's there on him, right? It's not like he's a leverage play like you have with more McIlroy, I should say. I don't think he's a horrible play, right? I don't think he's a bad play by any means, but I just have a hard time classifying him as anything other than average. Everyone starts -1, and you're like, damn, I should have played him, and then they finish +4. Exactly, right? And I can almost guarantee you, right, who are the guys that are like +2, +3? I know at one point, right, that Cam Young was like +4 in his round. He ended there at +1. There are going to be guys like Cam Young, right, that started horribly that end up in the top 10 at the end of the week. And maybe it is Cam Young, right, who people were dancing on his grave when he was +4 through like 7 holes. I was not one of those people. I know better than to do that out there. I didn't play them for my 4-round stuff, but just watch what you did. All you people on Twitter that were saying all of that, watch, will probably end up top 5ing at this point now. So on the flip side, Tony Finau, right? I played him. He was a core play. I hate that people were doing this. People were real happy, right? When he was -4 through like 7 holes. He's now -1, and watch, he might even miss the cut tomorrow, right? I sure shit hope that doesn't happen, especially because I'm playing him for Showdown and also because I have him as a core play for my DFS stuff. But that's PGA DFS. You're 100% correct. Speaking of, let's talk a little bit of lineup construction and then go through some props. So real quickly, in terms of putting lineups together, when I'm as contrarian as I am out there for my Showdown lineups, I don't have to do very much at all to get different, right? So when I'm just clicking guys that are all going to essentially be pivots, there's essentially no thought that goes into my lineup building. So if I'm going to click a Rory here, go down, click a JT. Down here in the 8Ks, we'll click Sahith. In the 7s, let's go with Corey Connors. In the 6K range, I'll give you guys another little diamond in the rough that I'm playing. Let's throw... I think, yeah, Glover was one of the cheaper guys I was getting to here. So there's no thought that went into it, right? All of these guys are leverage plays. If they go out there and play well, I'm going to be moving up the board significantly by taking all of them. It simplifies my process. It embraces the variance of a round 2 Showdown. And rather than having to tiptoe my way around, building a lineup, just kind of pick the guys that I want to play, right? I build my player pool beforehand, make sure it's as contrarian as possible. And outside of I think like two, maybe three players, my entire player pool is pivots. So now, if you're going to be a little bit more chalky about it, right? Maybe you go out there and you do play a Scotty Scheffler up top. I couldn't blame you for doing that. Maybe down here in this 8-9K range, like you really love Spieth, which again, couldn't blame you for, right? I'm a huge Spieth fan myself. You throw him down there into the lineup. You go in and you have to think about ownership a little bit more now, right? You're at $7,300 remaining down here in the 7K range. You've got to go and be a little bit more cognizant about the players that you're putting in. So perhaps down here in the 7Ks, you can't take somebody that's a little bit more chalky. So maybe you wanted to play Bo Hostler. Well, now maybe because you have that chalk up top, it's not the best idea. So you have to go in and force in a lower owned Russell Henley, for example, who, where you at, Russ? You're here in the 7K range for sure. So you make that pivot for ownership concerns. There's always, give and take, right? That has to happen when you're building your lineup. So that's why I like being more contrarian. It gives me a little bit more flexibility when building. Heck, when I build my round 2 and round 3 showdown lineups, I can use an optimizer and I don't have to set any rules, right? I just set my player pool. I set some of my max exposures, right? Make sure I'm not getting too over the field on any one given player. And it's usually that simple, right? I'll iron out, make sure I'm getting exactly how much of each player that I'm looking for. And takes me a whole lot less time to build my lineups because it's straightforward. So that's what I've got for my lineup construction. Now let's talk a little bit of props, which I'm hoping we have a board for. I tried to take as much time as possible. Look at that, we did. So it doesn't look like we have one on Prize Picks yet, but we'll definitely be able to talk a little bit on Underdog. I like it, AC. I like the way you're thinking. Give you the Cam Young tomorrow, especially with the people trying to dance on his grave, right? You feel like Scotty's due for some regression, like a 20th place finish or something. Yeah, the putter definitely regressed today. Didn't look his best out there. Wasn't very sharp with the flat stick. So we might be seeing it this week, right? And as soon as I say that, I'll probably go out there and shoot -5, -6 tomorrow. But he's inevitable, right? He's like Thanos at this point, just going out there and snapping every single golf tournament. But in terms of prompts out here for round 2, I mean, golf course played pretty easy, right? Especially if you look at the morning wave. It played a whole 1.2 under par. The weather conditions this afternoon were a lot windier than what we had in the morning. And on top of that, it baked down a little bit. So in the morning wave, you had some of these guys like Cantlay go super low. Luke List was a relatively early tee time. Cam Davis, Spieth early. Same thing was now Tors, Hoagie, Benny Ann. Some of the guys at -3, right, like Scotty, for example, were later tee times. But in terms of true ceiling performances, right, guys that just went out there and crushed. Whatever prop they would have gone after yesterday just would have hit, right? Birdies, unders on bogeys, strokes, right? Anything, fantasy score, right? All of them would have hit all of their props out there were the early starters. So while I don't see a huge weather edge for Showdown out there for round 2, for props, if you're going to take a positive stance on a player, I think the honeypot, kind of like Nick actually mentioned, and he was doing this for DFS, right? But what he was mentioning is taking guys starting maybe like 40, maybe 40 minutes, like an hour into tee times, is doing that, getting them in the perfect air conditions. So slightly higher temperatures, low winds the entire day. I think scoring conditions in general are going to be as easy, if not easier, than what we had in round 1. And if we wait like 40 minutes into tee times, I think we get like the perfect guys to attack. So what I want to check now is see if we have any pins posted over here on Twitter. Doesn't look like we have them quite yet. That would be useful if we get them there at some point. But it doesn't look like we have that quite yet. I'm getting spam called by my brother right now, which I don't care about. I've got to get this done right now. But let's talk through some of these props. So in terms of what we're going to target for round 3, I want to take some unders on strokes, some overs on birdies. And for a birdie average, we actually had a 4 birdie average for the field. So seeing some guys posted here at 4, 4.5 has me excited to take some overs on birdies. So let's see. We've got 3.5, and Eric Cole was actually projected below the average, which, I don't love the fact that he's projected below it, but I kind of understand it after the round that he had today. Let's see. I don't know. I'm liking a lot of what I'm seeing, right? I'm just trying to scroll through and look at a lot of these birdies for right now. Let's see, Hideki there. I think some of my favorites were towards the top. So just at first glance, having guys like hit the gala at 4 birdies feels like a little bit of a mistake. He's a top 30 birdie maker in the field. He's probably a top 20 birdie maker in the field if I would go out there and check my metrics. But the birdie average for round one was right around 4 per round. And again, for somebody that's better than average in the field at making birdies on his preferred surface for putting, feels like something that I should keep an eye on. So I'm going to go ahead and take that out there for our underdog slip. And the bogey average was over 3 per round. So because it was about a 4 birdie average, as you could tell with this 0.83 under par, they were making right around 3 bogeys or worse per round, which means maybe we could take somebody at 3 for an under, right? So like Brian Harmon, for example. Now he's teeing off a little bit earlier than I really want. I think that Sahith here with this noon tee time is like perfect, right? Teeing off at like 9 a.m. local. At 9 a.m. local, it's supposed to be like 53 degrees, right? So by the time it gets to 10, it's going to be at nearly its maximum temperature. So you've got that, lower winds, extremely receptive greens. Whereas with Brian Harmon, right, he's teeing off a little bit earlier than that, right? Nearly an hour earlier. Will be playing in some slightly colder conditions, but that didn't detract the guys today, right? The guys today played to an easier scoring average over there in the morning. So that's tempting. Let's at least put that in the shopping cart right now, especially given that I think the average was like 2.9 per round. I didn't run the average after the round ended. It was too close to the start of the live stream, but we'll have to see. Any props down in chat? If you guys have anything that you want, let me know down in chat, and I'll take a look at them. Let's see. That tap in was hard to miss. Yeah, that was for Scotty, right? He missed a 5-footer on hole number 7. He missed a bunch from like 10 to 15 feet. It's hard to watch, isn't it, right? He almost snapped his putter. I saw that. And I think Rory almost snapped his putter too. The amount of money you would pay to see Scotty Bojax in the putter, yeah, I've done that with too many long irons to count at this point. To see a tour player do it, I don't think we've seen it for quite some time. I know Sibu does it from time to time. Would be quite something. So speaking of, I'm actually going to enter this prop slip right here. Both of these players, and the reason why I'm doing it, just to give you guys the analysis again, are projected like at the field average for round one. I think round two, you're going to see maybe even slightly easier conditions, and they're above average players in their category, right? So for example, Sahith, above average birdie maker, right? Brian Harmon, right? Above average bogey avoider. We're getting 2.91x here. Like, I'll take that all day. So we'll enter that, go with the higher on birdies, the under on bogeys. I wish we had these tee boxes to look at so we could try and figure out exactly what it's going to play like for tomorrow. But for the time being, that's probably our best guess. Over here on Prize Picks, I think we're going to see pretty similar pricing. Now, we went through the birdies. I looked through a couple of the bogeys as I was going through here before. Now I want to look at some of the strokes because I didn't give it its due diligence the first time it went through. And like I mentioned just now, if you guys have any props that you really like, let me know down in the chat. I am always ears for that. And these green and regulation props, I know the green and regulation average maybe wasn't as high as some people were expecting, but I haven't ran the exact numbers. I believe it was around like 11 per round. So to have like a Brian Harmon at 10, like that's, I know we took him for, bogeys there, but maybe that would have been the move. Let's see, 10.5, 12.5. Oh, I have a feeling this board's going to be quite favorable for us by the time we're done with it. I'm going to have to run some averages. I'm going to have to do some due diligence on the stats to make sure that this is nukeable. But based on what I'm seeing right now is these, green and regulation numbers seem a little bit low. Same thing with the fairway numbers. It looks like there's some value there. And the strokes, they seem pretty fair. I think the strokes look pretty accurate across the board. I think that Prize Picks might post them like 0.5 higher when it comes to the strokes. So maybe not the best value for taking unders on strokes here, but I thought that the birdies were decent on a few spots. And then I know Sanjay's not hitting the ball that well on approach, but like 10 greens for Sanjay M just feels a little bit criminal. And it's 10 for a lot of players here. Like, what do they have? They have Big Cat at 9.5. He hit 10 greens today. And they've got him at 9.5. Now, I know it's the second round. He's a little bit tired, but like, It's intriguing, let's say that much. Especially if I go and run the green and regulation average and it ends up being something close to 11, then it's really going to be intriguing. Like 11, like if it is for Victor Hovland. Speaking of, let's see. Do we have a board over here in Prize Picks? If not, I've got to run and do that analysis. So, as per usual, guys, appreciate all the support here on the channel. If you want access to all the slips as I enter them, go ahead and check out the Patreon page because that's exactly what I'm hopping out of here to do. I'm going to do some research, see if this stuff is nukable because if you can't tell, I'm pretty excited about it. It looks like it is. We're going to have to see if the projections end up holding up. But conditions look perfect tomorrow, right? They look better than what we had for round one. So we can go off those averages, maybe even bump them up a little bit, and I think extract some value. Can Spieth continue in the top five? It'd be nice, right? Can he? Sure. Will he? We'll have to see, right? A lot of golf tournament left. Tiger claimed he had some bad back spasms. Yeah, good point. And thank you for pointing that out before I go out there and take his greens. Yeah, I'm staying away from him with a 10-foot pole. I won't touch him with a 10-foot pole. That feels like a ticking time bomb out there at the back. Unfortunately, might end up withdrawing, right? If it ends up getting bad enough. So hopefully ends up playing well, right? Like you said, so sad. And hope the best for the big cat out there. But looking forward to our round two action. Appreciate all the support here. Smash the like button on the way out of here and subscribe so you don't miss our content for rounds 3 and 4. We're doing live streams just like we did here for round 2. And I wanted to go live at night so that you guys can join this live. And for anyone that couldn't make it, can watch the replay up until lock. Obviously, it'll be up here for longer, so give people more of a chance to get all the information that they need. So if you're watching this on replay, you do have any questions that you wanted to ask, go ahead and throw it down in the comments. I'll try and get back to you before lock, especially if you post it sooner rather than later there. So go ahead and let me know if you had any of those for me. But again, appreciate this for you guys. Best of luck with all that exposure. And I got to get to work on some of those props here.